All right, good afternoon, grazers. I'm going to do a video here about calculating the area that you need to. This probably looks super overwhelming, but I have people at least at work, at my day job, that ask me, about calculating forage, and people think the math is hard on it. So I wanted to go over, I'm getting ready to go on a trip, and I'm going to be out of town for, we're going to say, a week. And so I wanted to go ahead and put all the fences in place for when I'm going to be gone. But my dad's going to come over and move the cows for me every day while I'm gone. So one of the things people ask about is, how do you calculate how much grass your cows need? And Missouri does a rotational grazing school, and at that school they teach you dry matter calculations. And I don't know if every state does that or not, but it's actually one of the requirements in order to get any kind of assistance in setting up watering systems or fences or things like that, is to go to that class. But at that class, they give you, whenever you finish there, they give you this grazing stick, and there is a ton of useful information on here. You may be able to order one, I don't know. You can probably look it up, but I'll try to show the information that's on here as we go through this. So the first thing I did, and I'll try to make the picture on the front of this video, is me checking the height of the grass. So I know the area that the cows are going to be in, and so I went across that pasture and I took 10 different measurements. And so I checked, what I did was I just stepped off 10 paces, and whenever I got to 10, I looked at the very front of the toe on my left foot is where I measured my grass at. So every single time I'd walk across, I'd count to 10. Where my left toe hit the ground is where I would take my measurement at. And so this grazing stick has 1 through 36 inches. And so you place your grazing stick on the ground and you would measure up to the height. And so when I did that in 10 different sections, it came out to 26 inches the first time, 18, 16, 12. And you can see, you want to make sure that while you're checking that you don't give yourself a bias one way or another. And that's why I go 10 steps and then I measure the grass at the front of my foot. So that way I don't try to pick somewhere that's got taller grass or pick somewhere that's got shorter grass. I just set myself an angle going across the field, and that's where I stop at. So when it came out all the way down, these were my 10 lengthened inches: 26, 18, 16, 12, 20, 10, 15, 20, 17, and 21. When you add all that up, it came out to 175, and I divided that by the 10, which came out to 17.5 inches of grass. That was the average across that field. So the next thing that we have to figure out is how much dry matter is there for every inch of that grass. And so your local area out west, obviously it's going to be significantly different than it is here in the Midwest or in the East. And every state's different, and you can probably get with your extension office to find out what it is. This grazing stick right here has on here, hopefully I'm putting this close enough where you can see it. So it has, notice right here, estimated dry matter in pounds per inch. And so it asks you, do you have fair, good, or excellent forage? And I'm going to say that this isn't fertilized. I haven't fertilized in years. And I have not been doing total grazing. I've been doing rotational grazing. But I'm going to say that it's good. So I'm going to estimate that this area is good. When you rotate it, it has different types of grass. And so the first one is Bermuda grass. It also has Caucasian. Make sure that I'm actually being able to see this. I'm going to just bring that up right here. I'm going to change the focus maybe. Okay, that's not going to show. But it's got Bermuda grass, Caucasian blue stem, native tall warm season, tall fescue plus nitrogen, tall fescue plus legumes, red clover alfalfa, orchard grass plus legumes, and then it's got mixed pasture. So even though this is mostly fescue, there is orchard grass in there, there's clovers in there, there's some other broadleafs in there. So I'm going to go with a mixed pasture. And what it says is for fair, you have 150 to 250 pounds per inch. For good, you have 250 to 350 pounds per inch. And if it was excellent, it would be 350 to 450 pounds per inch. So again, I'm going to go with mixed pasture, and I'm going to say that it's 300 pounds per inch. So when I go back over here to my board, when I calculated that out, it came out to my 17.5 inches of average grass height that I have, forage height, times 300 pounds per inch. And then that comes out to 5,250 pounds of dry matter per acre. And so I'm going to use that calculation to ultimately determine how much of an area it is. So I know now we have 5,250 pounds of dry matter. And you can do your own calculations on your own. Some of them I think are fairly complicated. You can microwave them, you can bake it in the oven to bake down the moisture out of it to determine, there's thousands of pounds of forage there, but whenever you actually break it down to how much is the dry matter, this is what it comes out to. And so next is the question of harvest efficiency. And, if you're on take half, leave half, you're estimating you're going to take, 50%. If you're doing take a third, leave a third, trample a third, you're going to plan on taking 30%, maybe. And all of this I'm calculating, this is what I'm doing for 1 day of forage. So I'm going to plan on the cows moving one time a day. And so I believe, based off of what I'm seeing through this total grazing, that I can get about 70%. It might be a little bit higher, but for purposes, I'm going to use 70% harvest efficiency for that amount. So if I was doing 80% or 90%, I have those here too. But I'm going to take my 5,250 times 70% or 0.7, and you come out to 3,675 pounds of available forage on 1 acre with 17.5 inches. So if I was planning on utilizing 80% or an 80% harvest efficiency, it would come out to 4,200. 90% harvest efficiency would come out to 4,725. Again, for purposes of this video, I'm going to go with 70% harvest efficiency. So the next thing is you have to know how much your cows weigh. And so that's going to be an average. And some of this, if you're moving cows on a regular basis, you can start to adjust these numbers every single day. I have currently about 50,000 pounds of cows. And so what we're going to do is over here, you see that I have 50,000 pounds. And it tells you, same thing, this grazing stick actually tells you what your needs are. It's got everything on here from horses, cattle, sheep, dry cow, lactating cow, dairy cow. But for a lactating cow, it says 3 to 4%. And so if you had, stockers, it's going to be around the same thing. So I am planning on 3.5% of their intake. And so take my 50,000 pounds of cows, I multiply it by 3.5%, and it tells me that my cows need 1,750 pounds of dry matter per day. All right, so I know that they need 1,750 pounds of dry matter, and I know that there's 3,675 pounds of forage if I'm going to do a 70% harvest efficiency on 1 acre. So now I move down to determine how big of an area do I actually need. And so if I need 1,750 pounds and there's 3,675 pounds of available forage, I divide the 1750, divided by 3,675, and it comes out to 0.47 acres. So next, we'll move over here to the far side. I'm going to try to be a good instructor, not walk in front of the screen here, but or the dry erase board. Next is determining the paddock size. So I put up here, and most everybody knows 1 acre is 43,560 square feet. So if I want to determine how big of an area I need, I'm going to take my 43,560 square feet and I'm going to multiply it by 0.47 acres, right? Because that's what we came up with down here. And it comes out to 20,473 square feet. Okay, so there's our number, 20,473 square feet. Now we have to determine the field that we're going to be in. How big is that field? How wide is that field? What fence do you want to set up? Right? Either way, no matter what size our paddock is, we know that it needs to be 20,473 square feet. I'll grab my tablet real quick. All right. Man, this is terrible for focusing here. All right, much better. Okay, so I wanted to show, so this is what I came up with. This is on Google Earth. And so if you go to Google Earth and you go up here, you can hit measure, and it adds this on here. And what it does is it allows you to move your starting point. You hit add point, take it down to the end of the field, like this is the field they're going to be in right here. And depending on where you're at, I'm going to go right there. You add that point in there, and it tells you what the length of that is, right? You can also do a calculation, an area calculation. You hit close the shape, right? And it'll tell you, and you got this drop down menu, it'll tell you that's 1.2 acres. But, so the size of the field that I'm going to use, as you've seen on there, I'm using 500 feet wide. The field is narrower up towards the top and gets just a little bit wider down towards the end. I'm still going to use 500 as my average. So the next thing I do is I take that number, 20,473, and I divide that by 500 feet, and it comes out to 40.94. And so that tells me for 1 day, I need to make my field 500 feet by 41 feet. We'll say 40.94, so 41 feet. So that's what it comes out to right here, 500 feet times 41 feet. Now, if I wanted to set this up into 3 days, I'm going to show this here. So again, the field is long, right? Show that there. I could set this up so that way it was just like that, you know, and you could say this is 41 feet, right? The other option would be, I shouldn't have drawn on there, it's going to take away the beautiful scenery. I could take and I could make this 123 feet long, and the water in this field happens to be right here. So this is where the water is at. So what I could do is I could, if I wanted to have a 3-day paddock, and if you're familiar with total grazing, you know that after 3 days, you don't want to graze back over the same area. These plants will all start to grow again. So what I plan on doing is I made this wide enough for 3 days, but then I'm going to subdivide it like that. And this is going to be day 1. This is going to be day 2. And this is going to be day 3. And so after that, the next question is, okay, well then you can go down through here and do the same thing, right? This is going to be, these would all be even in size despite my poor drawing. This will be day 4, day 5, and day 6. Now what will happen is after I move the cows from day 3 to day 4, obviously I'm going to take down a section of fence right there, and I'm going to run that fence right here once day 4 happens. And so same thing, you know, on day 1 I'd take this one down, on day 2 I'd take this one down. After the 3rd day they're going to jump over here to day 4, and then same thing. 5, 6, if you wanted to go further down the line here, you could say, you know, we'll do one more section here. You could say this is day 7. This is day 8. And this is day 9. Right? And then it would be the same thing. When I got over here to day 7, I would close that off or open that up, and then I would continue to close that off. So it gives them an alleyway back to water. They're not regrazing any of this because all of this is going to be starting to grow by the time we get to day 7. And then same thing, moving on down the line. So hopefully this helps. If there's a different way that you calculate it, by all means, put it in the comment section. If you got questions, put it in there. If there's a different type of video that you'd like to know or like to see, let me know. Most of the time, and most grazers that have done grazing very long, they call it the grazer's eye, right? You really do get an eye for it. You can look at a field. If you do these calculations for a month or 2, which is what I did when I first started, you can really figure out what your harvest efficiency is and what your dry matter is rather quickly. And most grazers these days will measure a section off and set their fences, and if they're off just a little bit, they can adjust what the size of those paddocks are. So the one thing I'll say is, if you want to feed less hay, in the wintertime. Let's talk about the non-growing season. Once that non-growing season hits, if you start to measure out your grass like this, you will absolutely feed less hay and you'll have less waste. Daily moves, at a minimum, will significantly reduce how much hay you feed if you're doing your calculations to increase your harvest efficiency. And one of the phrases that I love is someone said, turning your cows out into a 15-acre field is the same as opening up your hay barn and letting your cows go in there and eat, as much as they want to. And people will tell you, I'd never do that. Well, you're doing the same thing by opening up your field and just letting your cows walk around on 15 or 20 acres. You're not limiting where they go and how much they waste or any of that. So anyway, hope this helps. These grazing sticks are pretty neat. I really don't know. This one says, I'll put the name out here. So this one says SEMO Specialties, and it says that's in Jackson, Missouri, but a phone number that's on here is 573-243-0090. And lots of good information on here. Obviously, a regular yardstick would work just fine, because that's going to be the primary thing you use, is determining the grass height. But hope this helps, and hope all of you have a great weekend.